Hello and welcome to Bleed. This is the show about advertising and more with me, Ryan Whyte. I'm a freelance graphic designer, and today I will not be joined by Jacque Moodley, aka Falcone the Beatmaker, the permanent art director, and that is because I will be highlighting our favorite parts from Bleed Season 2, Episode 4, featuring Mandla Black Jar Moscow. The episode is called The Time of Witches, and the reason why it's called this is because as creatives, and I say creatives loosely because as you know, if you've been listening to the show, I believe everyone is a creative being or has creative potential. Whether you're an engineer, a lawyer, an accountant, it's there. We're all creative. Anyways, but for the sake of this conversation, we're going to say us in creative fields, us being graphic designers, art directors, copywriters, musicians, filmmakers. Anyways, so us as creatives in creative industries, we found that in a lot of our conversations and a lot of our experiences, we find that something special happens when you're working late, when you're working on a pitch or an idea for a campaign. Something just clicks at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the morning when you've been through iteration after iteration. Email us at bleedadvertising@gmail.com if you want to chime in on this, or DM us on Instagram. But that's basically what we discussed in this episode. And Black Jar basically elaborates as to why it worked for him on a particular occasion, and the whole conversation started because basically there was a copywriter at our previous agency. His name is Clayton Bond. Shout out to Clayton Bond. We were struggling to crack this idea, and he just so happened to have 100 bouncing balls, like a pack of 100 bouncing balls, and we found a jug from the kitchen. We put it in the center of the boardroom, and we started throwing bouncing balls into this jar, and eventually we were just doing that, and we weren't even working on the brief, and it was 3 a.m. and then it dawned on me, what the hell am I doing? Is this a normal thing to be doing? Does this happen in any other industry? Someone, like maybe a surgeon mid-surgery decides to, hey, I feel like throwing bouncing balls in a jar. I don't think it happens. So that's kind of what we discussed there. And without any further delays, this is that exact conversation.
And I remember the one time we were sitting in a boardroom, and you remember Clayton?
Yeah.
So Clayton decided to put like a jar in the middle of the boardroom, and we were in that massive boardroom at Promise. Yeah. And he bought a bag of 100 bouncing balls. I don't know if you remember this time, when there was like bouncing balls in the office. Anyways, we were just throwing bouncing balls into this jar. And we were just doing that till like 4 a.m. And then at that moment, I was like, what am I doing with my life? We're not actually sitting behind a computer. We're not doing anything. There's no laptops. Yeah. We're not designing anything. We're brainstorming.
Throwing bouncing balls.
But at 4 a.m., your brain can't work.
Yeah. No.
And we're just throwing bouncing balls.
You just numb out.
And then I questioned myself. I had like this moment where I was like, first of all, this is weird. It's different to other industries. And I was like, what am I doing?
I think.
Have you had anything like that?
With me, man, honestly, it was actually with the Was a Nazo campaign. Because like the first objective when I got there was, we need a key visual. There's no key visual. Like, okay, there's an idea, there's a lead, we still need a key visual. And man, I remember like being in that moment and deciding somebody's got to actually sleep here the whole night and actually hack this key visual out. And that's when I realized that my two mates weren't up for it. So I was like, okay, cool. And I just stayed the whole night there, man. And I was working on this thing. I think it got to like 2 a.m. And my girl calls me. She's like, hey, you good? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Like, you still working? I'm like, yeah, I'm still working. I think that time it was probably like an hour. I wasn't doing nothing.
Yeah.
Like that image was just like halfway deep edged.
Yeah.
I'm still like trying to manipulate things. I'm like, you know what? There's no way I'm going to finish this. But I think what hit me was knowing the fact that if I finish this, I've actually accomplished something. And I ended up finishing it within pretty much that morning.
Yeah.
But I went home, came back, and when I showed it to the guys, honestly, they were also surprised.
Yeah.
Like, yo man, this is actually dope. This is bigger than what we thought.
Yeah.
For me, it was a moment of, okay, cool, you know what? I actually have achieved something.
Yeah.
We've gotten an image and a key visual that we can actually work with throughout the whole campaign. And it would be something that would become a video or whatever the case may be. For me, it was like, look, at that point, I wasn't sure what I was doing at 2 a.m. in the morning. But I think the end of it was I got to my final stone. I was like, okay, cool. This is the milestone that I actually had to get to. For me, it was a moment of accomplishment more than anything. Working in that campaign was a moment of accomplishment because it ran for like, what, 2 years?
Yeah.
And it was like,
That was big, man.
yo,
I think something special happens at 2 a.m. in the morning. You get into like, no, really, like, and I haven't done it in a while, thank goodness, because, but
We're getting on, bro.
yeah, we're getting older. But like, I think you go into flight mode, and it's such a cool thing. Like sometimes, I think creatives also sometimes chase it.
yeah.
Because there's this moment where you get like tunnel vision, and like nothing else matters, and like you kind of block out the world, and whatever, all that matters is on your screen.
It's like that moment between being awake and being like asleep.
Yeah.
It's like right in the middle.
But you're like hyper focused, but just on one thing, and nothing, and everything else like sort of dissolves in the background. And like sometimes it's cool, and sometimes it's crazy, and that always happens with pitches. Like once the nanos is kicked in, or like the the chicken lick and the 16th
The tequila.
the 16th wing, and you're like, then you just like everything fades out, and you're like on your screen, and then you feel like you get something, and it's horrible because I hate that feeling, but you also miss it.
In my culture, they call it nako ya baloi, which means a time of magic, if you would say. But that's just like sugarcoating it. The actual direct meaning is the time of witches.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the time of dark magic. But there's just this belief in my culture as well that at that time, it's the best time to work because there's so much energy actually moving in through. So it's like you can work through the night, and like once you tap into that energy, then you start churning.
That's true. It's like a eureka kind of moment. So like, it's almost like when you've worked on this thing and it's just it's not bearing any fruit, and then it's that time where you like just turn away and you're like, okay, there's something there. Yeah. So now you were working, you were in the zone, as like I think we commonly say, like you get into the zone. I think the flip side of that is like you remember Porsche, right?
Yeah.
Porsche was the best, so she was our traffic manager at Promise. Yeah. And we would go to her and we'd be like, I don't know if I'm going to make this deadline tomorrow. And she was very cool. You could almost be like, you can flag it ahead, you weren't scared. Yeah. And then she would always say to me like, don't worry, Whyte, when you die one day, it won't be written, he completed the deadline on your tombstone. Did she ever say that shit to you?
No, actually.
Because you always completed your deadline.
Yeah, I don't think she mean Whitey like she was.
Oh, my surname.
I think it was derogatory.
It was my surname. Whyte, she used to call me. It happens in no other industry. You know, you're call a surgeon and you'll be like, this procedure, we need it like now. We like, it takes as long as it takes. Like, when I cut your body open, this is what's gonna happen.
You need 500 appendectomies by tomorrow.
True, man. And like I think just like some people just don't understand that aspect of, or like the behind the scenes of actually how things run when it comes to advertising. Like, look, man, it's not actually just like cut and paste, like command G and then there's like magic. No. Like there's so many hours that actually put into this crafting. Me going to Nick like, what do you think, bro? Yeah. There's like that whole kind of back and forth. There's time, and you going back to the PC, working and rethinking. It's time. People just think it's cut and paste and it's done.
So there we have it. The time of witches, or being in the zone, creative moments of inspiration, which just so happens to happen, you know, when you're dead tired, at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the morning, throwing bouncing balls into a jar. So yes, So, post this conversation, that led us to a conversation where I don't know if it's happened to anyone out there, it probably has, but you've completed the campaign or the presentation or the pitch doc, and 360 slide pitch deck, and at the 11th hour, someone brings their laptop to you and displays a very similar campaign or a similar line being used in an old campaign for a similar industry, we discuss how that happens, and then straight after that, I think at this point I should say, hey, that's really interesting, it's really cool, but it's also Sunday and it's noon here, and I'm a bit tired, so just listen to the conversation, damn it. Anyways, here is that exact conversation.
One of my best things, speaking of cutting and pasting, is I'm sure this has happened to all three of us. We've cracked an idea, we on a pitch or whatever, it's a massive presentation, and then someone brings their laptop. Have you seen this campaign where they've used the same line or like a logo or something, and it's for the same financial institution, and then you're like, reboot.
That's when you're like in the final stages of your like.
And like you want to kill that guy, but at the same time you like maybe saved us.
I've actually never had that. But I have had like a situation where I was working at Afropulse. We were doing like a whole lot of DSTV and GoTV stuff, and we were working on a campaign for GoTV, and we were like, look guys, we're looking for something that's actually like very generic within Africa, but at the same time like it doesn't really like bother people. And we decided, and we had an idea of, okay, cool, why don't we just like use everything, pretty much the same thing that happens in Africa the whole time, politics, like it's always banter. At least we're not touching on religion, and we're not necessarily, stepping on people's feet. But it turns out in like Ghana or other places in Africa, politics is almost like religion, so it's like a very touchy subject. So even when you use it in advertising, there's certain things that you're not supposed to do, and we only realize that at the end after actually shooting that, oh snap, we're actually supposed to remove some of these things. You know what I mean?
Sensitivities, but I mean that might water down your concept or like defeat the whole.
It did water it down, but I think we obviously kind of worked our way around it, but what our main goal wasn't actually reached. Like we wanted it to look like this, and we're like, it's gonna look so awesome, but now you've kind of like taken off the hair, the mustache, and it doesn't look as dope anymore.
I suppose that happens even with Hollywood and films, where some movies are banned in certain countries. So I think it's like a similar thing.
Yeah, 100%. But the thing is, GoTV doesn't exist in South Africa. It's only in like West Africa, like Nigeria and those other countries. So it's also that thing is, yo man, we actually didn't live there. We didn't know that much about where we're advertising. So I think that was the lesson learned there, if anything.
So the final part of this conversation that I'm going to leave you with is we kind of stitch the first two conversations together quite nicely. That's what happens when you have three art directors in a room. We just land up stitching things nicely together. So we somehow recall the topic of the bouncing balls and also the surgery. It's almost as if we were just improvising and riffing on the spot. That's what happens when you've got two freelancers. Did I say freelancers? I meant to say freestylers in Black Jar Moscow and Jacque Moodley. I'll leave the stitching to them, and I'll stick to my day job as a freelance graphic designer. You won't be hearing from me. I'll leave you with this conversation, and then it's going to end. Follow us at Bleed Advertising on Instagram. Check out our website, bleedadvertising.com, and feel free to email any complaints or comments or compliments even. We'll accept compliments on bleedadvertising@gmail.com. What else? Tweet us at Bleed Show. Buy us a coffee on Patreon even. Why buy us a coffee? I don't know. People are just using Patreon, and it's kind of like a begging thing. I think it's like online begging. So yeah, become a patron of, and I don't know who would pay for this. I'm kind of just happy doing it for free, from the goodness of my heart and Jacque Moodley's heart. So yeah, a little bit of a public service. If you enjoy the public service of having your time being wasted. So anyways, back to Black Jar, back to Falco and Moodley. Here's the conversation where we stitch it together nicely. I'll see you next week, maybe? I don't know. Let's see.
Just going back to like late nights, working late nights, something just popped into my head is like, I don't think working late is exclusive to advertising and doing all-nighters and working 3, 4, 5 days solid.
Yeah, not at all.
Like, I know surgeons and doctors that do that, but then
Investment guys,
accounting, law, whatever it is. I think the difference is it feels like if you're in law or if you're a surgeon or a doctor, you're actually working. You know, I go back to the bouncing balls thing, and like maybe you have to go through that to get to your moment of inspiration.
Yeah.
But for me, like sometimes you can crack a brief right from the beginning.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes your first idea is your best idea.
Yeah.
Because how many times has it been where it's like you present something, no, you go through all the other iterations, and then it's like, let's go back to that was actually quite cool.
The first
and then
one.
you build on.
But I think it's also built into like agency thinking, where the first thing you present is never. So you keep your best idea, even if it's your first idea, you keep it till like third or fourth round. You finally go, hey, I think we cracked it. But it's the thing you got in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I learned this a couple of years ago, where I was like, the ideas that I know are crap, I'm going to present first. Cause let's kill those.
Yeah.
Because the ones I really want, even if it's the first idea, let's do it third round, second, fourth round. Because
So
there is this perception that your first idea isn't the best idea. And I think that's bullshit. Sorry.
Always just
Yeah, I think sometimes your best idea, because you know the brief is fresh. You got all the information at your fingertips. You haven't like overthought it, and you have a solution like, oh, this banking service needs to do this thing. Here's a cool way to do it. Boom. But obviously, there's processes and people you have to go through.
There's so many pizzas that you have to eat until that point. You know what I mean?
You might as well get all your Nando's in.
No, but that's the thing. Like,
True.
But then I think like, okay, people have been crying. People have been on the phones to their spouses and their family.
When are you coming home? When are you coming
like
home?
people are on the edge of tears, and it's like, no, but we've solved it. But you know what I mean? Like if you're a surgeon, you'd be like, honey, I'm like mid-surgery.
Yeah.
They'll be like, okay, that's chill. Like, what are you doing? And then you tell them, no, I was throwing bouncing balls.
We're just bouncing ideas. Bouncing ideas? What?
Like, people
But I think
don't understand.
I think also the difference is, and you're 100% right there. It's like when you're a surgeon or when you're like a mechanic or whatever the case may be, you're actually doing
Manual
something.
labor,
You know what I mean? Like you're doing something. And with us, it's like you're just sitting there, like. So I'm trying to pick into your brain, man. You know, like that's what's happening the whole time. We're just like picking each other's brains, like
stuff that you can't explain, right?
Like yeah,
the process.
yeah.
You know.
And that's pretty much what happens the whole time. But I think is the thing about it is once you get that idea though, that's where it starts becoming more fulfilling.
Yeah.
Like because I mean with the surgeon, the fulfilling point is once he starts cutting. I've got a couple of thousands now. if I keep going down, I've got a few more. Yeah, you know, I've got a few more to go now. Yeah. But I think that's just the thing with our industry is people don't actually understand the real side of man. When we're in that boardroom, it's not just computers and laptops. Sometimes it's actually pens and a few snacks and a few bouncing balls.
Yeah.
That's what it takes to get the brilliant idea.
I've just about had enough. Bad energy can pack it up. Way too many things falling apart like Bupilo ain't really bad enough. Kick a man while he's down, straight to the curb. My demons ain't backing off. I ain't giving up either, so I live, letting off what I'm packing on. It ain't really safe around here, even the grass man snakes watching. Keeping air open for the hissing in the air, all the schemes they plotting. Yeah, mission getting higher, if you want to send me losing cats get lost. So I never follow in the shoes.